ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in tonight. I've got one of the world's current best artists, I would say, comic book artist, a great man. You see him on Comicscape Kings now and again. He's a man of few words, but when he does speak, he comes out with some great one-liners. He's an amazing man. We got Mr. Andy Smith. How are you doing, Andy?
Doing good. How are you?
Thank you for coming on. I'm very good. I appreciate you coming on. I've actually been really looking forward to chatting to you because, as I said, I don't see a lot of you on. Like, you're not a big talker on social media. You're quite a chilled out guy, which I like. But I just wanted to know a little bit more about you.
Sure.
And I was looking you up, and it says you started off. You've been an artist since the early '90s. Is that right? Like 91 sort of time.
Yeah, you nailed it. 1991, started working professionally for DC Comics. Got the job when I was still a senior in art school. So yeah.
Right. And you went to the Kubert school as well. Is that right?
That is. I went to the Joe Kubert School, which is what it was called at the time. I guess they shortened it up to just the Kubert School now, but yeah, back then it was his full name. So, and yeah, I mean, it's. I started there, and the school was only like 11, maybe 12 years old when I went there, and it's hard to believe that it's going on 50 years now that the school's been around. So,
and did you when you were growing up then? What was it that got you into comic books? Can you remember what your first sort of like where you found your love for drawing and for comics?
Yeah. I mean, I always like to draw. You know, I always say that every kid, you know, as soon as they can hold a pencil or crayons, will color and draw and whatnot. But most kids, I would say, grow out of it in regards to their parents will introduce them to something else, or they just find other interests, you know. And this could be like months later or a year later. That's what happened with my daughter. But for artists, I think, and it's whether, you know, any type of artist, I think that goes with writing as well, but specifically art, since you can draw really young. Most 2-year-olds aren't writing stories, I don't think. We just keep at it. You know, it's just something inside of us we have to do. We have to keep drawing. And even when other things came about, like video games and stuff like that, when I was a kid, I'd play them, but I'd still rather grab a piece of paper and a pencil and just draw. And when it came to comic books, it was around 1982, 83 that I got I was walking home from school, you know, got off the school bus, stopped into a 7-Eleven local convenience store, you know, and we always would, because they had video games and, you know, whatnot. And they had a magazine rack right in front. As soon as you walked in the door, and to the right-hand side, lower side, there were some comics, and this Captain America issue 275 just, you know, the cover just jumped out at me. So I picked it up and looked through it, and I just loved it, you know. So I bought it, and then that was it. Once I was bitten by that bug, all my spare time drawing kind of switched over from cars, because I would draw like cars and stuff, because I liked Hot Wheels, Matchbox cars. I kind of switched over to going, I want to draw superheroes now. So that's what I would do. I would copy stuff and try to make up my own stuff and whatnot. So
yeah, it's brilliant. And were your family supportive of your art? Did they push you to be an artist, or was it like did they take it serious?
I wouldn't say my mom and dad. So it was my mom and dad and my brother. I wouldn't say my mom and dad pushed me that way. They were very supportive. We had you know, like most houses, we had a spare room that was in the house that was just, you know, whatever it is, whether it was, oh, somebody's coming over, set up something in there for them to sleep, whatever. And they actually got me a drafting table, you know, regular full-size drafting table. And, you know, when I say 82, 83, I was 12, 13 years old. So it's not like I was a little kid or anything. So they got me this drafting table and set it up in there, and I could go and draw there. And I can remember when friends would come over, they'd see it. And because it was in this spare room in the house, they thought it was my dad's, you know. They just couldn't believe, like, your parents got you this full up drafting table and didn't just say, here's some paper and a board, go draw in the corner somewhere. And yeah, no, they were real supportive. And when I decided I wanted to go to the Kubert school, which was probably around ninth grade, freshman in high school, I showed them the ad. And, back then the ad was in a comic book. And then obviously there
Yeah.
was internet and stuff. So they're looking at their kid, freshman in high school, showing them an ad in a comic book, right along with the other ads of like x-ray glasses and stuff, going, I want to go here. But
Yeah.
I called the school and got the brochures and stuff sent to me in the mail, and so they could check it out and I could check it out and see that this was a real legit school. And we went up there and visited and stuff just so they could, kind of ease their fears of like, this isn't a traditional college. What's my kid want to get into? So
Yeah. And I noticed, obviously, with you, one of your biggest, more recent comics is your Core Draft comics. But you've worked on a lot of comics like that, haven't you? Like fantasy and sort of Red Sonja, Conan, things like that.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't definitely probably wouldn't throw it into a lot category out of working in the mainstream for probably, what was it? I think I stopped in the mainstream around 2015. Started so 24 years in the mainstream. I did 10 issues of that type of stuff because Red Sonja Claw was 4 issues, and then the Claw miniseries was 6. So
Right.
I mean, it was a fair amount, and it was in around 2010, I think 2011. I was doing it, so it was pretty close to when I left, and I got into it. It was really fun. I loved that stuff as a kid. I just never saw myself
Yeah.
drawing it. So
Did you ever like when you were younger? Were you into fantasy things a lot? Were you into like Dungeons and Dragons or anything, or
no, not really. I mean, I knew what Dungeons and Dragons was, and I would buy some of the stuff that they
yeah,
put out because of the artwork more than anything
yeah,
else. I probably did role playing. I probably played Dungeons and Dragons a few times. I think my brother was more into it. Um, but I only played it a few times. I mean, I liked the fantasy stuff in regards to movies like Conan, Beastmaster,
yeah,
Highlander, Call. I like the movies because I like the visuals. I like comics like Conan and Tarzan and stuff. But I never really got into gaming because pretty much I was just a nerd, man. My free time was drawing, drawing or
yeah,
going to the movies. That was my free time. So
yeah. Well, it
yeah,
worked out well for you.
I like to think so.
And what part of America did you grow up in, Andy? Like, what state were you
I
were
grew
you
up,
born in?
yeah, I was in Maryland. I grew up right outside of Washington D.C. My mom worked in Washington D.C. at the Department of Justice.
Oh,
So
nice.
I was I grew up in a town called Beltsville. Most people haven't heard of it. So the easiest thing to say is I was 10 minutes away from the University of Maryland, which is a pretty big school. So, and that's where a lot of my friends went to school after high school and stuff. Where I could have went to school, and I tell you, I love going to the Kubert school, fantastic school. However, there's only about 250, 260 students there. And being, 18 years old, going away to college, because that was in New Jersey, I was like, 18 and single, and I'm going to a school with, let's say, 275 students where there were probably 5 girls in the whole school.
Right.
And I'm talking to a buddy of mine that went to the University of Maryland college, and, same time. And I'm like, how's it down there? And he's like, dude, there's like 4-to-1 ratio, 4 girls for every 1 guy. And I'm like, okay, I didn't really need to hear that, but thanks. Hope you have fun.
And when you got to the Kubert school, I was talking. It's quite interesting because I was talking to Shane Davis on an interview, and he was saying how it was very competitive. He said because there isn't that many people there, it's a very competitive sort of. He always felt like other people were trying to copy his work and stuff. And did you ever experience any of that? Did you a bit of competitism?
I think there was, and I think there was because, as artists, and especially in a school atmosphere, whether you're knowingly trying to gain the teacher's attention or not, you want to put your best foot forward, be the best you can. Obviously, when I was in school, I don't know about when Shane went. When I went, there were no like awards or anything like that. So you weren't like trying to win like an award over somebody else or anything. But I mean, I always was trying to do my best every week in every class. When the assignments came due, you'd post them up on the wall in front of the class. Everybody would stand, and then the teacher would walk and critique everything. And then he, depending on the teacher, open it up if the other students had any comments about other people's work and stuff. In regards to people competitiveness from like other people wanting to draw comics for a living, when I went there, the first year, it's a 3-year school. The first year there's like 100 of us, 105. The third year there's only like 40, I think. So it was competitive, but honestly, out of those 40 people, there was probably not even half that wanted to draw comics for a living. Because the Kubert School, yes, it was founded by Joe Kubert, who was an icon and a legend in the comic book industry, but he set the school up to teach lots of different things. He would, there were illustration classes. And what I mean by that is, there were classes because, I think Shane went 10 years or so after me. So the whole industry was different at the time. There was no computer stuff when I went. So there were still jobs out there when I went to the school where you could get illustration jobs for spot illustrations inside magazines. You could get magazine covers. Time Magazine would hire artists to do their covers every now and then. One of the guys I went to school with and graduated with actually wanted to, and I think he ended up working for him. He wanted to work for Hallmark or greeting cards. And they were one of the companies in third year that came to the school and looked at students' portfolios and stuff for like recruiting. So we had a bunch of different students that just had different avenues they wanted to pursue. They weren't all, I just want to draw comics for a living. Some guys wanted to ink. Some guys wanted to color, the guy that does all my lettering for my books, Core Draft, First Man, whatever, was a classmate of mine at the Kubert School. He's been a letterer since he graduated, basically.
Have you stayed in touch with many other people that you were in the school with, or?
Yeah, I mean that is stayed in touch with a handful that I was close with in school. I mean, you hear that my graduating class was like 40 some students, so it wasn't that big, but it was still 2 separate classes in third year, one class of 20 and another class of 20 and stuff. So the 20 students in my class, the other 19 or so, I was definitely tighter friends with some of them compared to others. And it just came down to our interests and stuff as well, like anything. And yeah, I'm still friends with quite a few of them. When I got married 30 years ago in October, I had a bunch of them come to the wedding and stuff.
Nice.
And then, when Facebook took off, I don't know, in 2010 or whatever it was cool to be able to connect with them through there and, be able to talk more and stuff. So
That's good. It's good that you can keep in touch with him. Just that's obviously a big part of your as a comic book artist. I'm sure that's a memorable part of your life going there. Like you would have spent a
oh
few.
yeah,
You would
yeah,
have had a good laugh with people and some good memories and stuff. And
yeah. In fact, just because I just saw this on Facebook, a friend of mine that went there, because I was also, being such a small school, you'd be friends with, you know, people in second year and first year as well, And one
yeah.
of my friends that was a year below me, he is actually an award-winning watercolor painter.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm not in like realistic stuff. He does, believe it or not, he does beautiful realistic watercolor paintings of birds. He does you know, the you know, the human figure and stuff posed and whatnot. And
Life paintings. Like
yeah, and I mean, his watercolor work is very photographic, which with watercolors is not easy. And
yeah.
he's won awards. I think he branched out a few years ago into doing tattoo design and stuff. Another guy I went to school with, I believe, I think it's in San Diego, but I know it's in either San Diego or LA. Um, Opened up a tattoo parlor and is a really, proficient, high level tattoo artist. So
Brilliant.
yeah,
Have you got any tattoos, Andy? Any?
I do not. I
No,
do not.
I
I don't
haven't
like
either.
pain, and I don't like commitment. Like my mind changes about stuff that I like so quick that
Yeah.
I just have a feeling if I got a tattoo, I'd be like, "That's really cool." Then a year later, I'd be like, "Oh, I hate that." Like if I ever
That's
got a
based.
tattoo, I would never draw it because as an artist, you're your own worst critic. So the last thing I would
Yeah.
want to do is draw something and be like, "That's awesome," and then a few years later, be like, "That sucks," but I see it every day. You know.
Yeah, I get you. That's pretty
Let's
much
see.
why I've never got one, to be honest. Because, like you said, I'm frightened that I'll regret it after I get it.
Yeah, I think if I ever got anything, and I've never really thought of it until I had a daughter. If I ever got anything, it might be like a symbol or something that kind of represents her,
Yeah,
and not too large. And then if I did that, I'd want to see it. So like the backside of my wrist, something like that.
yeah, I
So
get you.
you know,
Something symbolic that
yeah,
you'll cherish.
yeah, something real symbolic and meaningful and stuff. So yeah.
And out of all the work you've done a lot of work. I was swamped when I was looking up online the stuff you've done. There's even stuff this not in the comic book world. Like you've worked for outside companies and stuff, haven't you?
Hmm.
Through your time, is there anything that really stands out that you really love doing, that you were excited to do, that you would do again throughout your whole career? Is there anything that you
Um,
did
well, I can't
like
say
any?
comics because I'm still drawing comics, and that's still as exciting and fun.
Yeah,
For outside stuff, I like doing the advertisements that are look like a comic book page.
right, yeah,
I've done a few of those. Most of the work I've done in that has been for one specific brand or product, but I've done a couple others. I like doing that stuff because growing up, they were huge in comic books where you'd see the Hostess ad and all that crap with superheroes and stuff. And Neil Adams had a studio up in New York. I mean, the studio's still there, where he did a lot of work doing ads for different products and stuff in the 70s and 80s. I mean, it was such a great time. I mean, he hit at the perfect time for that, because I know it slowed down probably in the 90s because they were going more with photographs and whatnot. But I love doing advertising, but with, a comic book feel to it, because I just think it's eye catching.
Yeah,
I think even today, like if you pick up a magazine, and I haven't seen this in forever, but I think if these art directors at magazines gave it some thought, they'd see it as a good idea. Because if you're flipping through a magazine at a bookstore or something, and an ad, and you see an ad for a product and it's like a comic book page, that would stop you, because everything else in the magazine is photographs. And what do you try to do when you advertise a product? You try to stand out and do something different, you
yeah,
know
definitely.
so
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. A lot more. It'll catch advertising like that does catch the human eye a lot more as well. It's fun, isn't it? It's like it stands out.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it would work for every product, but at the same time, if you look at some of the stuff that Neil did back in the hello Katie, that Neil did back in the 70s and 80s, I mean, he was advertising freaking tape, just tape with superheroes. And then he was advertising like tape cassettes, you know, with a hero and stuff. And I just think it's,
Yeah,
like I said, I think it stands out. So it's unique.
and have you've actually created characters as well, haven't you, within the comic book world? Have you created any of your own unique characters or?
Now, wait, are you talking about for other companies or just me?
Yeah, for other
Oh,
apart from you, not yeah, not independently. I just mean when whilst you were at other companies.
yeah. I mean, the closest I came, and I mean, I shouldn't say close because I did create these characters, but they never saw print. When I was working on Earth 2 for DC, Earth 2 is that's where they had the Black Superman. I can't remember his name. And they had
Right,
Batman that was Thomas Wayne, the dad with the red bat symbol. So I was working on that book, and one of the issues of it, they wanted basically uh, Mr. Freeze, which is a existing character, but they wanted a Mrs. Freeze as well. So they were like a villain duo, and I designed them. And then there was a Black Harlequin that they wanted, so I designed Black Harlequin. And there was a female version of Killer Croc, and
right.
I think there were a couple others. So anyhow, I drew them up, not just on the comic book page, which I did, but I mean, I drew them on, like model sheets for myself, because I had to send them in for them to look at and okay. And I drew it. I was working on the story. And then about 10, 12 pages into the job, my editor emails me and they're all frantic and stuff and said, "Stop drawing. We've got some rewriting we've got to do. Apparently, the higher ups didn't read this or blah, 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 whatever. So stuff has to be rewritten. We should have something back in the next couple days, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, okay. So I got the new script, and those characters were basically out, and some other ones were in that were already done and whatnot. And the whole direction of the story was different and whatever. So that was about as close as I came to it. So, I mean, I probably made up some small secondary type characters right on the page as I was working, but I don't really count those. So,
And as far as your own stuff, you obviously invented Core Draft, but for those of you that don't those people out there that are tuning in that might not know you, what are your big projects, your big comic books?
I worked. So before Core Draft, I did First Man, which is my cosmic type superhero, who I actually created when I was a teenager, young teen. And so it was First Man, Monarch, and Penumbra, those three characters, and the cast around them and stuff. And then I did a book called Jungle Lords, which was because, like I said, I grew up loving the Tarzan movies and Tarzan cartoons and such. And Jungle Lords was my take on Tarzan, except his Jane was more like a jungle woman, like Sheena or Shauna,
Right.
and they were a married couple and stuff. But their origin was more along the lines of like superhero origin, because when they start off, they're just kind of like Steve Rogers, really meek and mild and small, and they're transporting this liquid for the government, and there's an accident and stuff, and they get doused in it along with some lightning and whatnot. And when they come around, they're both like perfect, idyllic, you know, people. And they're in a jungle at the time, so that's where they crashed. So that's Jungle Lords. And then there's another superhero called Ultra, the Ultimate Man, who is your, typical 18-year-old slacker living on his own type of deal. And basically, he is playing a video game one night, and there's a big electrical storm going on outside, lightning storm and stuff. And it's just this confluence where the lightning hits, goes down through the video game, and electrocutes him basically and stuff, but he doesn't die. He gets jacked out, has superpowers of flight and stuff like that, super strength and whatnot. And he's kind of an asshole, and you know, is more concerned about, getting laid and stuff than actually fighting crime. So
That's a brilliant concept for a superhero, though. To get your powers through a computer game like that. That's
yeah,
quite cool.
yeah,
Did you
yeah. It was fun.
what would you say if you had to name a few other artists that are around today that you admire or you like the artwork of, like people maybe in Comicsgate or not in Comicsgate, just people that you are there any that you like? Any other artists that you like the
Oh yeah,
style of?
yeah. I mean, um, I love, and he doesn't do really much of anything anymore, which I hate because I love his work. But Doug Mahnke, who had a long run on Green Lantern, did a book called Major Bummer that he co-created with John Arcudi. I love Doug's stuff. When he was doing Superman and then Batman, it was great. So Doug stuff is great. Olivier Coipel stuff is fantastic. All the guys I mentioned aren't really doing anything, which sucks. um,
Yeah,
uh, well, Jorge Jimenez at DC, he does monthly stuff. His stuff's great. Dan Mora, whose stuff he's at DC, but I found his stuff on a book called Klaus, which was probably almost 10 years old now, that he did with Grant Morrison at Boom Studios, which was a different take on Santa Claus. Those are newer guys. I like classic guys, that I grew up with reading were, John Buscema, Neil Adams, Steve Rude, Alan Davis, my mentor when I was at the Kubert School, Bart Sears, who once again doesn't really do enough work anymore.
right.
um,
Was he another comic book artist then? Your mentor?
yeah,
Did
Bart
he draw
Sears. Yeah, he was working when I met him at the Kubert School. He was a teacher, and he was working on Justice League Europe at the time.
right?
And this is 1990, 91. And I knew his work before I met him, And when I found out he was teaching at the Kubert School, I went and introduced myself to him because he wasn't teaching my class. And I just showed him some of my work. And that was a nice thing about the school being small is, it wasn't a large building. It was small. You could go up to any teacher and just introduce yourself, whatever. And I did. And
Yeah,
I guess he saw something in my work that, I guess he saw promise in my work. And he kind of took me under his wing and, would help me out on the side since I didn't have him as a teacher, and kind of mentored me a lot through my senior year at the Kubert School. So, and then, obviously we became friends, and, we're still really good friends and stuff. And like I said, he
right.
just doesn't do enough work. So I try to have him do a cover here and there when I can. So,
Yeah,
but
fair play.
yeah,
Has he done covers for you then in the past? Has you
yeah,
done a few?
he did a cover on each volume of First Man. He did a
Nice.
variant cover. He did a pinup on the inside of Jungle Lords, which I want to do like the old school Marvel pinup, where when you open up Jungle Lord, now Jungle Lords was stapled, it wasn't square bound. So when you open it up to the center spread, I made sure that's where the pinup was, because it was, it was a double page spread. So if you wanted to, you could pop the staples and pull it out. And I'm pretty sure I didn't put anything important on either. There's something on either side of it, the back side of the page, but I don't think it wasn't story related stuff. So if you pulled it out, you're not going to ruin the story of the book in the book.
Fair play.
And then he did the covers for, in Core Draft. We also, my buddy Dennis, who I do the book with, he's the one that's a super Dungeons and Dragons guy. And from
Right.
day one, when, they first came out in the 80s, and he wrote a game module based on the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition rules featuring Core Draft and the world of Core Draft. Well, thank you very much. And so we had Bart do the cover for each of the game modules, and then we had Dan Lawless color it. So it has that nice, painted feel, kind of like the game modules of Dungeons and Dragons from the 80s.
Yeah, it definitely has a little bit of. I could tell someone who worked on it with you was influenced a bit like both Dungeons and Dragons. It's got that feel about it.
Yeah.
Very fantastical. Personally, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons quite a lot, so I'm into all that. I like Conan. I like Lord of the Rings and things like that. I'm into a lot of fantasy.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I mean, like when Lord of the Rings came out 20 something years ago, good Lord, 20 years ago, whatever it was, 25. I went and saw it, saw every one. I enjoyed it. I loved the visuals of it. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was fantastic. It's still just a great trilogy and stuff. I've got, I'm sure there's more than one, but I've got one of the, making of Lord of the Rings softcover movie books, just because of all the cool behind the scenes stuff. So
yeah, there's some brilliant artwork and concepts in Tolkien's work, definitely.
Yeah.
And when so did you have your own sort of? Did you go through sort of a cancellation period? Like how did you come across Comicsgate? How did you get involved with Comicsgate originally?
Oh, it was through Ethan. So I didn't really. Actually, it's funny because I was in Comicsgate for over a year, maybe over 2 years, because it was during the first Core Draft book is when I actually got heat online for something I posted, a meme, which I'll tell you. But to answer the question first, now, like I said, it was 2015, and I was in Baltimore at the convention, Baltimore Comic-Con. Bart was there, Ron Mars was there, and then a friend of ours, Sean Husfar, was there. He's a businessman. He's on the side of comics, as in selling and stuff, graded editions, signed stuff like that, not in the creation part. Anyhow, so I was talking to those guys, and back in 93, 94, Bart started his own company called Ominous Press. And he hired me to be the art director and also ink his work. And then I was going to, after the initial launch, pencil my own book for Ominous Press back then. Well, long story short, the company only lasted about 1.5 years, 2 years, because that's when the comics went, woo, the big crash and stuff. So fast forward to 2015, and we all were talking, and we kind of said, why don't we try it again? So that's what we did. And it lasted a few years. I did a 4-issue miniseries called Demigod, and all the characters Bart created. And then, Ron wrote Demigod, and Bart was going to do his book, Giant Killers, and Sean was the businessman, and, whatever. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. And that's when I went into crowdfunding with the Jungle Lords Ultra book. And then after that ended, I did First Man. And through that, I was talking with Ethan because I reached out to him because I met Ethan back around 2003 or 2004.
Right.
And so I've known him since then, and we'd see each other at conventions and whatnot. And he just, we were messaging, and he said, you should come over to Comicsgate and, crowdfund over here. And I was like, okay, what's that? Because I'm not a big social butterfly.
Yeah.
I had, at this point,
So
Facebook.
it wasn't like a political thing for you then. It was just
Well, I mean,
literally because
he
you were.
said one of the reasons Ethan asked me and I guess invited me was because he knew kind of politically where I aligned and stuff. We were,
Right.
back on Facebook, we were in a group we were in two different groups. One was a comic book artist type group, which was, everybody, didn't matter. But then we were also in a comic book group of creators that were more right leaning, So we were in that
Yeah.
group together. I think, Shane was in there as well. Pretty sure David Williams was. And so he knew that about me. And he said, you should come over here and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, sure. I mean, and once again, I get all of that. That's when I really started ramping up on Twitter, because that was the other thing. He's like, Twitter is where is the best place for getting the word out. And then of course, YouTube. I mean, as
Yeah.
we know, he's a smart guy. So like he was definitely teaching me stuff. And it's not that Facebook isn't good, but even now, after doing this for 5 years or however long it's been, even I tell people now that are wanting to start doing crowdfunding, when they ask about social media, I'm like, well, if you're going to rank it when it comes to non-video stuff, so not streaming, just the posting type ones, I say Twitter's probably the best. Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram are tied because they're owned by the same place, right? You probably get more views on Instagram than Facebook because it's a visual medium. In Facebook, I mean, I've got 5,000 friends and the same 30 people see my posts. So,
Yeah.
and then,
You're
but the
very.
best thing is a combination, I think, of YouTube and X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter, but I think those are the best too. YouTube for sure, because like this is how you can talk to fans. And during COVID, it was just so necessary to be able to not go crazy locked in your room and be able to talk,
Yeah.
and it's just cool getting the feedback right away and stuff. But the
So
cancellation thing for me, and the reason I'll call it that is because I lost friends over a stupid meme where it was when, first, let me ask you a question. Going from your accent, you're not in the States, are you?
no, I'm originally from Manchester in England, but I've lived in London most of my life,
Okay.
so I've got a bit of a mixed accent.
So if I mention what I'm going to mention the political thing over here that I posted, and if you're like, what's that? I'll try to fill it in as much as I can, not to leave you out in the dark. So
No worries.
it was during the first core draft campaign, which I launched, I believe it was in, I don't know, early summer, right? Or midsummer. I don't even remember, maybe June, whatever. And it was, I
Right.
think it was August of that year, same year. And Biden was the president over here. And Ron DeSantis was taking the illegal immigrants that were being flown into his state, and he was flying them up to Martha's Vineyard, real ritzy area up north, right? And he
Yeah.
was obviously he was getting heat for it. The governor of Texas was doing the same thing, whatever. So I didn't create it. I just was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a meme, and it was a picture of a husband, a wife, young couple, 30s, and a toddler, like 3, 4 years old, standing holding one of their hands. And then I think the mom was holding the baby. and they had sombreros on. The baby might have been dressed up like a burrito. I don't remember. The little girl was dressed up in, sombrero and other Mexican type garb that you would just, think of, right? And I'm sure it was just some picture somebody found online, whoever created the meme, and thought, oh, this is perfect. So then the words they put over top of it, and I still laugh because I think it's funny. The words over top of it were we'd like a free trip to Martha's Vineyard too. And I literally, all I did was I hit share, and then usually I'll share something and I won't even say anything above it. I'll just hit share. But this one I hit share and I wrote LOL because I thought it was funny. My God, you think I just started, I don't know, whatever you hold truly dear, I shit on, right?
It's
I'm
amazing
like,
some
yeah,
people are offended at the most weak
I
stuff, aren't they?
was getting people. I obviously got people that laughed at it as well, but then I got people, oh, you racist, that's race, and then they unfriended me, and I had people in private chat say, man, nope, we can still talk to each other at conventions and stuff, but I got to unfriend, blah blah blah, and I'm just like, wow. So, and I have one guy that I've known for years, and he is, of Mexican descent, I guess you'd say, even though I'm pretty sure, I don't know. I was going to say I'm pretty sure he was born here in the States. His mom and dad might not have been, but I'm pretty sure he was, but maybe not. I don't know. But the point is that this really cracked me up, and I'll tell you why. Is he wrote, one of his comments was, there was some back and forth in the comments, and I just wouldn't come around to it because he was like, dude, that's not cool, blah blah blah. And I was like, what, man, it's just a joke, whatever. But the thing that really got me was, he goes, nah, man, you're totally making fun of my people, sorry, bro. And he unfriended me. And the thing, and maybe, no, it wasn't Jimmy. Maybe, I don't know. This is how I see it. Because the key thing that I picked up is he said, my people, right? So then wait a second. If I see somebody post a meme and it's taking a shot at a white dude, am I allowed, should I type in and go, no way, dude, that's not cool. You're making fun of my people. That's ridiculous. That's what comedy is. Yeah. You're supposed to be able to make fun of everything in comedy. It's like, I won't obviously say the guy's name, but it's like, dude, I'm not making fun of you. And you want to say I'm making fun of your people. I'm not. I'm making fun of the situation is what I'm making fun of. So whatever. I don't care.
I can't stand people that try to censor comedy. I think that's the whole point of comedy. You should be able to say whatever you want. If someone's offended by it, then that's on them, isn't it? At the end of the day,
and that's the thing. That's the long-standing. Obviously. Well, the long-standing thing is, you're the one that's offended. You chose to be offended. I've told my daughter for years, if she gets upset or mad or whatever over something, whether it's something myself and her mom did or a friend or whatever, I'm just like, you control your feelings, nobody else. If you're angry right now, it's because you're choosing to be angry. You don't have to choose to be angry. You can choose to be like, whatever, doesn't bother me. I don't care. It's the same thing with, being happy. I mean, you're choosing to be happy. That's great. But if you get offended or you get angry over something, that's on you, not me. Because the person next to you, take 2 people. I could show that same meme to 10 people. 5 could laugh at it. 5 might get angry over it. Or those 5 people that laughed, bad people? No. Are you bad people for getting angry? No. You just chose to get angry over it. I can't control you. So
are you
so that was it. I mean, that got me written up on not written up in a bad way, but I think it was Broken Frontier at the time, that website. just did an article about it because it was ridiculous. It was these guys, it was people I've known for, some of the people were comic artist friends that I've known for like 2 decades that unfriended me and stuff. And I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's pathetic.
Yeah.
Especially when you've been friends with them, and they should know you better than that, shouldn't they? At the end of the day, it's not.
Well, and that's it. I'm not,
That's-
some people, the people that shocked me that unfriended me were the ones that I would go out with at cons and drink beers with and hang out and tell jokes. And let me tell you, everybody that unfriended me, I've heard some jokes come out of their mouth where I'm like, oh, let's see you post that one. We've all told them.
Yeah, it's hypocritical, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that in this world.
Screw them.
Are you a fan of comedy then, Andy? Do you like any comedians? You got any favorite comedians, or is that not really your thing?
No, it's totally my thing. I did so I dabbled. I think that's a good word to describe it. I dabbled in doing stand-up comedy for a few years.
Oh, brilliant.
I got on stage, I did it a few times in the late 90s. Then I took a break from it when I went to CrossGen because the workload at CrossGen, the comic book company where I had to go into work every day, it just didn't leave a lot of free time to write and go find places at night to do stuff. And then when we moved up here to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live, I did some more stand-up again at open mic nights and stuff. And it's funny because a couple of the guys that I was doing it with are both, and that it's been 20 years now, but they both are touring comics now, and that's how they make their living. But what I actually got into in 2006 and did it pretty much until COVID shut things down was improv. So from 2006 to 2019, and for at least a good solid 8 to 9 years in the beginning, I was on stage, if not once on a weekend, a Friday and Saturday, with the improv comedy troupe doing improv. Wow. And then I did sketch comedy as well for just a few months. And that was the thing with sketch comedy is, and the same with stand-up comedy is, it's homework, whereas improv comedy, there's no homework. But there is, the thing people don't understand with improv is there is rehearsal. So with improv, we would get together once a week and have a rehearsal, because you want to practice new games. It's just like Whose Line Is It Anyway? But we also did, that's called short form improv, where you just get the stuff from the audience and it lasts 3 to 5 minutes, the scene. But then there's also long form improv where a scene might last 30 minutes or more. I always like the Whose Line Is It stuff better. But, I don't even know if it would go over in this day and age. But one of the things that I would do, so we'd have a backstage area, right? And if it was usually it's a 2-person scene. And when it's a 2-person scene, 2 people start off on stage, they go to the audience and they're like, oh, give us a suggestion of a location that would fit on the stage, right? You don't want to be like, oh, you're at a freaking racetrack. Well, a racetrack won't fit on the stage. So it's like, oh, you're in an elevator, you're in an office cubicle, some shit like that. And then the next suggestion is give me a relationship. Are we brothers or are we brother and sister? Whatever, shit like that. But when you do a 3-person scene, generally 2 people start on stage, and then after all 3 are on stage, you get the suggestions. After the suggestions, 1 person usually exit off stage so they can make an entrance after the 2 already start going. And one of the things I would do that would, I always would try to get my teammates to laugh and break character, but then of course the audience, the most important part, the audience. So if I had a t-shirt on, and I'm not going to do it with this one because I don't want to mess it up, and it's not baggy enough. But you know, you can take the bottom of your shirt, take it, pull it through, and wrap it up, and it comes up to here, and it has a little bow down here. And I don't know if my voice was picking up, and I would come out, and I'd just be so super gay, and I'd be like, "Oh my god, guys, what are we talking about? Oh my god, this is ridiculous. You guys are fighting about the dumbest stuff. Just stop it." Oh my god, the audience would lose it. My castmates would lose it. It was just, and I would do that all the time, you know, all the time. Now I don't even know if I could, you know, I mean, I know I could do it, but I don't know how well it would go over. You know what I mean? One of the sketches I wrote, one of the sketches I wrote, and it is on my YouTube channel. There's a stand-up thing on my YouTube channel that's probably almost 20 years old. And there's a couple sketches on my YouTube channel. No improv. None of that stuff was really filmed, but the sketches and stuff were. One of the sketches that I wrote, because to be a part of this sketch group that I was part of, you had to write as well. And one of the sketches I wrote was titled, "I Want to Be Black." And the whole point of the sketch was I walked on stage and there was one of the cast members in the sketch group was this black woman. And she was probably a decade, 10 years younger than me. And without, obviously when the scene starts, nobody knows what's going to happen. So she's sitting on stage in a chair and there's another chair right opposite her. And she starts off saying something like, "Send in my next appointment." So I walk in and I sit down and she's a dermatologist. And she's like, "So what are you here for?" And I go, "Oh, I'm just having some issues with my skin." And she's like, "Really?" And she's looking at me. She goes, "Well, I don't see anything. Is it on your arms or under your shirt? Do you have rashes or something?" I go, No, it's not that. It's my complexion, And she's like, "Your complexion?" She goes, "Well, I mean, you don't look too tan. You don't look super pale. You look just, I don't know. I'm not seeing the problem." And I'm like, it's just, it doesn't look right. Cause she's black. So I'm trying to work around it. And she's like, "I don't know. I'm not really seeing." And then right as she's talking, I go, "I want to be black." And she's like, "Excuse me? What did you say?" And I go, "I just want to be black. Look how cool you guys are." And it just goes from there. And then she calls security and I end up getting drug off stage by two nurses. So it's pretty, it's kind of over the top, but, I don't know if I could do that today.
Yeah. So you got something to fall back on then. If you ever get bored of comics, you could be a comic.
Yeah, I guess I still have a folder of stuff written. I'd have to dig it out and probably rewrite stuff. But yeah, I get.
Who would you say you were? Who would you be influenced by in comedy? Then did you have any growing up? Did you watch any old school comedians?
Oh yeah, I mean so I'm all over the place because I love Steve Martin. Freaking love Steve Martin. Favorite movie of his is The Jerk. It's his first one. I just love that movie. And then it jumps up to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I love Jerry Seinfeld. I love George Carlin. Oh my God. Why am I blank? Eddie Murphy, his stand-up from 1986 or 7, where it was Raw, just titled Raw, Eddie Murphy Raw. Holy crap. That is just hysterical. Rodney Dangerfield, I get no respect. I love self-deprecating stuff. That's a lot of what I would do with self-deprecating stuff. Richard Pryor, holy shit. Richard Pryor was just, I mean,
he was brilliant. Richard Pryor.
Just brilliant.
Like Gene Wilder as well.
Dude, him and Gene Wilder together, the movies, holy shit. The one, oh my God. I'm totally blanking on the name because I want to talk about it, but it's the one where they went to jail.
Stir Crazy.
Stir Crazy. Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus. Those guys, man. Oh, so good.
that was a brilliant film.
And then there's, oh, God. Oh, Brian Regan. Brian Regan has got to be my favorite clean stand-up comic. In fact, one of the guys I did stand up with at the open mics and stuff 20 years ago, who does it full time now, for a while opened for Brian Regan when Brian was touring around the country and stuff.
Wow.
And now he's got it, now my friend Joe has people open for him. So yeah, Brian Regan is fantastic. And it's one of those things, when I was doing it, it's kind of tough to decide which way you want to go with your humor. Obviously,
Yeah.
the best mix is clean and blue. Blue is dirty. If you're just going to be a blue comic that is, dirty jokes, or just not even the jokes are dirty, but you feel the need where you have to drop in F-bombs and stuff. The problem with it is you'll have a hard time getting on TV.
Yeah.
So if you can do both, and especially if you can be clean, like Brian Regan, forget about it, because he can be on TV. But now with so many different streaming platforms like Dave Chappelle, I love Dave Chappelle. I mean, he's not clean at all, but he doesn't have to be, So,
Yeah,
and I think
Chappelle's-
humor, you got to have it.
Yeah, definitely. A world without humor would be terrible.
Yeah.
And
I mean, when I do Core Draft doesn't have it as much. I mean, there's some, I wouldn't even call them one-liners, but Core Draft doesn't have as much humor, and it doesn't need it for what it is. But like First Man, I wanted humor in it. Jungle Lords has humor in it. Ultra has humor in it. I think it's fun.
Say, you should maybe consider doing a comic book about an alternate version of yourself that becomes a comedian, and have him as the main character, like his journey through the comedy world, all the seedy stuff that goes on in the background.
Yeah. Oh, Bob Saget. He came across on Full House like super squeaky clean, but he was a dirty comic, and it was great.
Bob Saget, yeah.
If you remember the show Full House, he was everybody thought he was squeaky clean, but man, when he got up on stage, woof.
Have you ever seen a Scottish comedian called Billy Connolly?
It rings
stand up.
I'm not sure. A lot of the comedians I see now are either clips on YouTube or a special they have on a streaming service. So if he has a special, I'll look for it, or I'll go to YouTube and look for it.
This guy's quite old school. He's like a legendary British comedian. You'll find loads of stuff. Billy Connolly, his name is. Just look him up. You'll love him. I think he's be right up your alley.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Like I said, I love that stuff. I mean, shit. Until he got burned out of the limelight. Bill Cosby stand up in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Dude was hysterical, and he was clean. So yeah. I mean, I like all different types. Louis C.K. He's hilarious.
Yeah. I definitely like Chappelle. You mentioned Dave Chappelle. I reckon he's on another level. He's like his jokes are brilliant.
Well, yeah, because he's on another level, because he can really tie into current day stuff and tell a story and really give you that ride. But then at the end, it's that big payoff that just gets you laughing, Yeah. And that's it. There's a huge art to it. And that's one of the reasons I liked, once I discovered improv, I kind of switched over, because, writing, you talk to, oh, thanks. I'm going to copy that link. One of the hardest things about stand-up comedy is, you know, you can spend for a good 20-minute set can take you months because you just keep going to clubs, and even guys like Joe Rogan and guys like that, you go to a club. Obviously, if you're Joe Rogan, well, he owns a club now, but before, because of his name, same with Chappelle, Chris Rock, these other guys, they could just walk into a club, and of course, the guy would be like, "You've got stage time. You know, you don't have to sign up and stuff." And so they would go to a club. They would be like, "I just need 10 minutes, 15 minutes, get up there." They might have note cards, do their bit, probably film it so they can rewatch it, see what worked, see where the laughs were, readjust. You know, one of the things that every stand-up comedian wants to take into account, and this is why they'll film their stuff, is laughs per minute. Because obviously you want to get the most laughs per minute that you can. Yeah. And everyone starts off doing like 5 minutes. I mean, I would open one of my buddies that is a touring stand-up comic that I met 24, 25 years ago. He's a big comic book fan too, so that's how we met. When he would tour up around this area, he'd always tell me, and he'd get me tickets to the show. And when I was still doing it, he would tell the promoter, because he was the headliner. He wouldn't tell him, but he would ask the promoter, "Hey, can my buddy get 5 minutes at the beginning of the show?" And I'd be able to go up at a Comedy Zone and, do 5 minutes or so just to work it out. But to get to an hour, like you see these specials that are an hour long, that's a year's worth of work these guys put in to get to an hour long special. So
it's a lot of hard work, like you said, and this trial and error as well, isn't it? They make their jokes and then they have to test them out on audiences and find out what are the best ones. And
when I was one of the ways I would do it, and this is just from other people saying, yeah, this is a great way to test out jokes, is, when you're just around your friends hanging out, don't stop and be like, "Guys, I'm going to test this joke out," and then do it. Just kind of work it in so they don't know what's coming and see what their reaction is,
Yeah.
That's a great way to test it out. And then there's always and this goes for, actually, I've heard this from comic strip artists too, the guys that draw the humor strips. If you write your gag for a humor strip or your joke for stand-up and it makes you laugh, it's probably going to make other people laugh too. So
yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank you for coming on, Andy. It's been great chatting. And
man.
I'm going to let you get on with your evening.
Okay.
But thank you. I really appreciate it. And you're welcome on any time in future. You've been a gentleman. It's been really interesting. I never realised the whole comedy thing with you.
Like I said, if you go to the YouTube channel and just scroll back, because the videos are in order, you'll find some stuff. But no, dude, I would like to thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. After 34 years in the business, I still, when somebody invites me onto a show or something, I'm always like, did they send this to the wrong person? So thank you. And
obviously it's nice to talk about something that isn't just comic books as well. I like to hear a little bit about your life. It's interesting.
Yeah, dude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a good night. I'll catch you again soon. Thank you, Andy.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
And thank you everyone in the chat. Adios.